This tiny path cutting through Bolivia's mountains is called Ruta de la Muerte, the Death Road. And yet, 25,000 tourists visit each year. Most visitors ride down the road. I was invited to ride up it.
How many people ride up the Death Road each year?
0.
So now, instead of simply avoiding a fall to my doom, I will also need to fight altitude sickness as I try to pedal to the summit 4,500 meters or 15,000 feet above sea level. For my fellow Americans, that's almost 3 times the elevation of Denver, Colorado, which we all know is a city that constantly brags about how high it is. I live in Los Angeles at sea level, and like a true YouTuber, I didn't do any altitude training leading up to the ride.
So finally arrived in La Paz. I made it, but my bike didn't. My bike is still in Los Angeles.
The missing bike was provided by this video's sponsor, the Pros Closet. More on them later, as long as the bike shows up. While waiting, a few of us decided to explore La Paz. Nigel, a former downhill world record holder, Bruce, a man currently ticking off the 100 hardest climbs in the US, and Charlie, who, for reasons I don't totally understand, turned down a poolside vacation in Mallorca for this sufferfest. I had 2 initial thoughts of the city. Number 1, wow, this place is stunning. And number 2, holy sh**, how am I winded just walking around? Fortunately, I would soon be sitting in La Paz's best seat. Way over there in the distance is La Cumbre. That is the finish line for our climb up the Death Road. The ride is only 62 kilometers or 40 miles long, but that's the least helpful metric found while researching the climb. The experience is basically like riding up Mount Ventoux, the infamous Tour de France climb, twice. That is, if the first time was on a ragged, narrow gravel road, and the second time, your ability to consume oxygen was reduced by 30%. And the entire ride you have to consider, as Nigel put it,
the 2,000-foot cliffs that mark the edge of the narrow road. One wrong turn or missteer would be unforgiving.
Back at the hotel, my bike had arrived.
There it is.
Now, normally I do these bike trips by myself, but spending the day with Nigel, Charlie, and Bruce really brought me out of my shell.
Creating content?
Yep.
The 4 of us were joined by Luke, a doctor who has averaged 50 flights a year with his bike for the last 3 years and has an FTP that's nearer to Filippo Ganna's than it is to mine. We needed to drive to our hotel in the Yungas Valley where we would start the climb the next day. But since most of that trip is downhill, we convinced our guide Cello to let us descend on our bikes. It was a long descent, and my first time passing semi-trucks instead of being passed by them. There's a whole video on that full descent that's already on my channel. But right now, we're gonna jump cut to the next day. Early morning, before sunrise, already on the Death Road. That was the plan anyway. This is John, animal magnet, founder of the cycling website PJam, and the mastermind behind this trip. He and Cello are the only 2 in our group who have ridden up the Death Road before, and despite their words, I'm still feeling a little apprehensive.
One last question.
Yeah.
Can you guarantee me that I'm going to make it to the top?
You're gonna make it, no worries. Hola, chico.
Vamos.
The climb begins in the little town of Yolosa, 1,200 meters or 3,900 feet above sea level. Compared to Los Angeles, the air is thin, but it felt luxuriously rich after spending a few days in La Paz. John and Cello plan to host trips up the Death Road and throughout Bolivia. This trip is kind of like a test run. Javier, a talented cinematographer, joined the group to capture footage for the PJam website. All those cool drone shots I'm using, those are his. Thanks, Javi. I set off with Nigel, Bruce, and Charlie, and immediately we were met with stunning views at every corner. It was so beautiful that it got to be a problem really fast. We would turn a corner, stop, take a picture, turn a corner, stop again. You get the picture. We were less than an hour into the ride and I'm already worrying about how much space I have on my memory cards.
So far so good, other than the fact that I'm sweating to death in this long sleeve kit. Everybody seems in good spirits.
Riding so slow.
We're at like 7,000 feet now. I'm not worried about anything until we hit about 12,000 feet. That's when my power just starts dropping precipitously. Precipitously? That's what I get for trying to use a new vocabulary word.
Totally iridescent.
I've never seen a butterfly that color. ¿Cuánto cuesta? 25.
This checkpoint is for tourists.
Gracias. Here's your map, Bruce.
Because of a new paved road, most local traffic, including buses and large trucks, no longer use this gravel road, which is very good for us, obviously. The exceptions are the minibuses that follow tour groups like ours going up and down the road. Biking up the death road is scary enough, in my opinion, but driving, that's terrifying.
Michelle probably tell me to pay attention to the road.
Luckily, John wasn't the one driving our support vehicle that day. Water, food, and an excuse to stop were all provided by our driver, Fico. He was the first one to wake up each day and the last one to bed after dropping us off at our hotel. An absolute legend.
Look at Fico looking cool.
But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end.
Fico!
That came out wrong. Fico is okay. He just couldn't drive the car past this landslide. It's kind of funny how even on this remote road without any cars, there was a decent amount of traffic. By the time we hit the second landslide, there was a traffic jam. I almost felt like I was at home on the 5 at rush hour. A little LA joke for you there that none of you will get. Anyway, for some reason, after crossing the landslide, I felt emboldened and deliberately rode near the edge of the road for dramatic effect. And then I remembered this is a YouTube video and not worth dying for. So back to the left.
We're about halfway up the dirt part of the climb, which means we're only about a fourth of the way up the entire climb, but I figured I'd take this opportunity to rest a little bit under the guise of telling you about my bike. So this is the BMC URS 011. I got it from the pros closet. The gearing has been a lifesaver so far. So I've got a 40-tooth chainring up front. I got a 52 in the back, and I've just been living in the 52 this entire ride so far. And after the last video, a lot of you commented and you said I should not do flats. I wasn't gonna listen to you, but then my coach said I shouldn't do flats, and I always listen to him. So I've got some Shimano SPD cleats on there, and I've got these sweet Quack shoes, 44 millimeter bars, and then I've got 40 mil tires on here. They're the Donnelly MSO Explorers, and they've held up wonderfully.
And I felt so spoiled riding that BMC. Everybody in the group loved it, but especially Cello. When we went to Lake Titicaca later in the week, he tried it out and absolutely fell in love.
Gracias.
Even now, like months later, he still talks to me about it. For a little moment, I thought about losing the bike again on the flight home, but I really like working with the pros closet, so I didn't. If you want more technical details on the bike, you can check out this other video where I break down the whole buying process at the pros closet, how it's a certified pre-owned bike. So that means you're getting a bike in top condition at a great price. If you think it's time for a new bike, or a certified pre-owned bike, or some components or accessories, check out the link in the description. The views, oh man. The views throughout the climb were epic. But the most famous viewpoint is Postcard Corner.
From Postcard Corner on the Death Road in Bolivia, welcome to the GCA show!
If you Google images of the Death Road, the majority will be of this small section. And like any other tourist group, we spent plenty of time getting our pictures there. In fact, there was a bit of a queue just to get a shot. The local tourism board has done a great job of turning the Death Road into a popular destination. And with all the cute signs and lookout points, it's easy to forget the history. I'll admit, I didn't give the road the respect it deserves at the start. There was a large group of tourists who were riding down and they were at Postcard Corner when we arrived. And I remember watching one of them dangle over the edge as their friends took pictures. Probably just for like Instagram. I was standing next to their guide, a friend of Cello's, while he yelled at them to get off the ledge. But they just ignored him. For tourists, the Death Road is a fun, adrenaline-pumping experience. But for a long time, locals had a very different relationship with the road.
This road was built by Paraguayan prisoners, 1920s, 1930s. We had a war with Paraguay. According to them, they won. According to us, we won. But we won the war, okay? Anyways, these guys were in La Paz in prison, San Pedro. This crazy dictatorship had the idea to use these people for construction. One of the constructions was this road. So they built the road during a decade, basically. Once they finished the road, the president decided to kill them. How? Just pushing them to the cliff.
For 70 years, this road was the only connection any of the towns in the region had to the capital of La Paz. If you wanted to visit your family, get supplies, or if you had a medical emergency, this road was the road you had to travel.
Over there we have that wood cross. Is from an accident that happened in 1985. Basically, two buses crashed. You know, one was going down, the other one coming up. That happened at night. It was very foggy, cloudy, and both buses were without lights. So both buses crashed and both fell down the cliff. Everyone died, 120 people at the same time, you know. It's crazy.
I had a hard time finding exact numbers, but most accounts I read said anywhere from 100 to 300 people died each year on the Death Road until the new paved highway was completed around 2006. And after that, deaths dropped dramatically, but even on a paved mountain road, driving is dangerous. A few days after the Death Road, Luke and I were working to catch up with the rest of the group after completing a bonus climb during our ride along Lake Titicaca. Before we separated from the group, Cello warned us to be extra careful on the descent because there were a lot of broken sections of tarmac on this particular road. I didn't trust my descending skills to be sharp at a high altitude, so I kept a considerable distance from that semi-truck in front of us.
Oh,
The driver, from what we can tell, the driver wasn't wearing a seatbelt and fell from one side of the cab to the other. We did what we could, which wasn't a lot because of the nature of the injuries, and we contacted authorities, but we were pretty far away from any major hospitals, and it took a long time for them to arrive. I've thought a lot about that driver in the last few months, and that ride. You know, to be honest, like I just didn't enjoy riding my bike for a while after it. You can see, like, in my ride history, I just kind of stopped. Like, I feel guilty about even saying that. Like, I'm not the one that was in the truck. I was just a stupid tourist there for fun, you know, for an adrenaline rush.
And over here we have this memorial. It's in Hebrew, as you can see. It's from another accident, you know. And this accident happened over there next to the yellow sign. This girl was different. She was holding a camera with the right hand, and she was controlling and braking with the front brake. So she lost the control of the bike and fell down the cliff. We normally put names after accidents. We have an English corner, French, Israeli, Bolivian, American corner. We have one. According to statistics, if we put a cross or a memorial for every person who died on the road in bikes, cars, buses, you know, we can have like a safety barrier along the road. It's crazy. People are just stupid, you know?
Yeah.
Be confident.
Going too fast or like those buses in the fog.
Yeah.
Man, that's so sad.
And the bikers, yeah. 50 years ago we were riding on the left.
Okay.
Going down with buses, with trucks, you know. And the road used to be narrow. We used to have people working as human traffic lights, holding flags, red and green, organizing the passes in the corners, you know. Mm-hmm. And some of them died because they were hit by the trucks or buses.
They don't see them.
Exactly.
And when did that change?
That changed since 2007.
Pretty recent.
The road was open. The new road.
Yeah.
Riding up the death road doesn't have to be dangerous anymore. It is scary, but as long as you stay away from the edge, you'll be fine. And despite Cello's flattery, our little group isn't the only one to ride up the death road.
What are you guys?
How many locals ride up every year?
A few hundred.
Every October, there's a local bike race called Yolosa La Cumbre, and they ride this exact route from Yolosa all the way to the summit. It took a little while, but after a little prodding, I found out Cello's done way more than race up the death road. He's actually a former Bolivian national champion. As we all struggled up the climb, he was moving up and down like a motivational speaker, pacing the stage, encouraging us to keep going. Riding with Cello felt safe, and for a moment, it almost felt easy. Almost.
How you doing there, Nigel?
Fine.
Oh no.
I've already ridden through it once. Usually you slow your technical section to it. Quick. I have a couple of sachets of ketchup in my bag.
Does that help with cramps?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never tried it.
We still had an hour or so of gravel to go, and the ride was really beginning to take its toll.
Greetings, Mitch.
Greetings. Such passion. We're at 9,000 feet. I'm starting to sweat now because I'm working hard, not because it's so hot outside. And we're about to enter the clouds, and it's beautiful. Hola. Buenas tardes. Spicy at the end there, huh? Up here they come. John is working. Yeah, John.
My friend John got me into this.
Oh, hey, Nigel, hold on. The good news and the bad news.
Go on.
We're halfway.
These guys are both cancer survivors who connected over their shared experiences and a love of cycling. They are two of the greatest humans I have ever met. One by one, all of us in our little group met John through his website PJam, where he documents the biggest, toughest, most epic climbs in the world. And he says of all the climbs he's done, the Death Road is the most epic.
This is ridiculous.
Now on the new highway, on pavement, far from the edge, and rejoined by Fico for support,
We might get some good news after all.
it should be easy to quickly smash the second half of the ride. A 20-kilometer, 13-mile climb at 6.4%. For me, at a normal Zone 2 pace, that's about 2 hours of riding, well before the sun goes down.
All right, just got to 12,000 feet, 8,600 feet ascended. Still got another 2,500 feet to go. Definitely feeling the altitude now.
Forgot about the altitude. Dr. Inigo San Milan, aka the doctor who works with Tadej Pogačar, analyzed data from athletes around the world and concluded you lose 2% of your ability to consume oxygen every 300 meters or 1,000 feet. And your time to exhaustion in that same elevation is reduced by 4%. That means by the time our little group reaches La Cumbre, we will have lost 30% of our ability to consume oxygen and will potentially collapse from exhaustion 60% sooner than we would at sea level. Isn't science great? Poor Bruce had been suffering from heat exhaustion during the first half of the climb and ultimately had to pull the plug. Cello jumped in the car to keep an eye on him.
See ya.
John was already digging deep. And Luke had zoomed ahead. He would be the only one in our group to beat the sunset. That left Nigel, Charlie, and myself to ride together.
How far in are we?
31 miles.
31 miles. 9 to go, 8 to go.
7, I think.
7, that sounds good.
But we eventually split as we each found our own pace.
I just got chased by 2 dogs. I wish the GoPro was on, but at least my Wahoo is recording so you can see my little sprint. I am 13,000 feet above sea level right now. The last thing I wanted to do was put down some power and burn a match. But here we are.
Here's the data on that little sprint that I was so proud of. So much raw power. All jokes aside, that dog was right next to my calf. I was terrified. And I love dogs. One member of our group, who shall remain unnamed, almost bought a machete just to bring on the ride with him.
Just past 10,000 feet climbed. I think I got like an hour to go.
Struggling for breath at 4,300 meters or 14,000 feet, I remember thinking, this might be the most beautiful place in the world. Of course, I was starting to suffer from hypoxia, but looking at the footage now, yeah, that memory holds up. It is gorgeous. And the footage, well, there was less and less footage happening because it was getting harder to turn the camera on. My fingers were tingling, and I was starting to see these twinkling stars around the edges of my vision. Charlie had a pulse oximeter, but I hadn't seen him for an hour or so at this point. I had no idea how near or far he was, so I wasn't going to get access to it anytime soon. Charlie was the only one in our group to do altitude training in a reduced oxygen environment. When I asked him the most valuable thing he learned, he said that if his blood oxygen level dropped below a certain point, he would stop pedaling and rest for a few minutes. Gradually, as long as he controlled his breathing, he would watch his blood oxygen level increase until it was high enough for him to begin again. So I got off my bike and I waited for the tingling and the haloed vision to go away.
I think I got about 20 minutes. There's some blue sky up there, believe it or not. It's gonna be close.
The sun was setting, and I had no light. Not a good scenario when there are semi-trucks passing you on a winding mountain road. Should I have waited for Fico, Bruce, and Cello to catch up with me in the van? Maybe. The last hour of the climb wasn't pretty. It was this like ugly recursive dance of like diving into the ditch every time I heard a truck coming up behind and I saw their headlights on the road, and ignoring the tingling in my hands and the growing stars in my vision until it was like too much to ignore. I was just trying to summit before it was completely dark, and I failed.
I can't believe I did it.
But I also succeeded. Not in a glamorous way. I actually rode right past the sign for the summit because it was dark, and then I had to turn around, but I found it.
Longest climb I've ever done, by far.
After that,
Wow.
I fumbled around in the dark a little bit, like riding in circles, looking for everyone else. Finally, I had the genius idea to use my iPhone flashlight. Wish I would have thought of that earlier. And my fingers, again, are still tingling at this point, so you can imagine my relief when I saw the van parked up ahead. Oh man. Charlie and Nigel had just finished their rides too. Cello grabbed my phone to record my immediate reaction, and I just had the most profound reflections.
I don't know. We're at 15,000 feet. My brain's not working right now.
As you can see, everything's still a haze. climbed in the van to warm up with Bruce and Luke, and we all made our way down to like a restaurant to eat after this ride. But John wasn't there. He was still climbing. The guy has so much grit, it's insane. We were all exhausted.
That was tough.
Hardest thing I've ever done.
Hardest, much harder than last time.
You guys are, all of you, my heroes.
Thanks, man. Best guide.
Remember to check out the link to the Pros Closet in the description. Everybody on this ride, all of their like social links and everything, those are also in the description. Give them some kudos, because what a ride.
There he is.
Yeah, you guys never thought you'd see me alive again. Wow. It's not like I was gonna have it was very hard. Did anybody else say that?
Everybody thought it was easy, yeah.